Like, people will go to the mall just to hang out because they do and have like community centers or anything. I've just seen him around, but nobody really paid any attention to him until women started disappearing. The first girl who went missing was 23 years old. I think at this point people were starting to get suspicious of the security guard. He brought them to the basement and showed them these 3 closed-circuit TVs, but each TV was just showing static. They could tell that at one point they'd been showing something though. Because there was a slight delay in the static, the room reeked of rot and decay, and it seemed to be a dumping ground for animal carcasses, construction waste, trash, and dead flowers. As they were searching, they found a crack in the wall, and when they pushed aside the trash, they found a small opening. They entered the room and proceeded to destroy the hole, widening it until it was big enough for a person to fit through. On the other side was a tunnel, maybe 6 feet long, that led to a chamber. One cop fired his gun, but the bullets just bounced off the creature's scales. He attacked the cops and sent them flying, and then he slithered up the tunnel and disappeared. The cops waited for him to reappear, but he never did. They scoured the area, but they couldn't find any trace of him. Since then, no one knows where he is or what happened to him. I'm avoiding malls after dark. You guys should too, because this creature is still out there somewhere. When they busted through the wall, they found a sight that nobody could have expected. When they checked the registers, they were all empty too. The mall owner was gone. She said that she'd seen the news reports and recognized the description of the creature. She said that she knew who the creature was, and she invited the police to come and talk to her. When they arrived, she welcomed them inside and offered them tea. She was a kind woman, and she appeared to be in her 50s. And if you want to keep watching, the next video I recommend is one I covered a while ago about a cursed doll that grants wishes. It's a creepypasta, and it's really scary, so check that out. She listened intently while the police explained what had happened. It was about the size of a dog hole, big enough for a person to fit through sideways, but too small for them to fit through. She agreed to take them to the mall to show them where the creature lived. But when they arrived, the cops noticed that Sarawati wasn't looking at the mall. She was looking at the nearby river. Sarawati led the cops to the riverbank and pointed to the water. She said, "He lives there now. He sleeps during the day, so you won't see him. But if you return at night, you might." There were also scratches on the sides of the hole. Police could tell it had been dug out with bare hands and teeth. It was obviously an entrance to something. And the images on the monitors would flicker for a split second and then turn back to static. At first, they thought it was just a stray cat, but the hissing grew louder, and then something scuttled past the hole. Whatever it was definitely not a cat because it moved too fast. Then they heard footsteps. He was cross-legged and meditating, and he had the upper body of a man but the lower body of a giant snake. His scales were green and brown and glittered in the torchlight. He was gigantic, easily 7 feet tall. He had sharp fangs and horns and huge yellow eyes. But what shocked the police the most was that he had a radio transmitter strapped to his chest. The hissing sound they'd heard before was the radio. It wasn't a natural sound at all. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, and they were followed by a slithering sound. Suddenly the police panicked and retreated because they didn't know what was in there with them. They didn't want to risk whatever it was getting at them. Fled the basement, and that's when they called for backup. So it seemed like they'd been watching something on those monitors at one point, but now all they showed was static. Because now, 3 girls had just randomly vanished without a trace, and every single one of them was from the same store. They even tore apart the bathrooms, but they couldn't find anything. Finally, they searched the storage room, and that's when they found the secret. They found a staircase concealed by boxes and barrels. It was hidden pretty well. It was covered in cobwebs and dust, and the steps were narrow and slanted and made of stone. The cops descended the stairs, and it got darker and damper the further they went down. Eventually, they reached the bottom of the staircase, and the air grew cold. They used their flashlights, and it illuminated a large, cavernous room. The ceiling was too high to see, and it was filled with trash and debris. The local police finally got involved, and the mall owner offered to show them the security footage from his store. But when they arrived, he was like, I don't know if you realize this, but all of our stores don't have any security footage. It's sort of a policy that we don't do that here. I'm sorry. Obviously, the cops weren't buying this, but the mall owner was like, hey, I'm sorry, but I own this mall, and I say what happens here. You need my permission to install CCTV cameras, and I don't want any. He was being pretty shady. She was just shopping with her boyfriend. And then and she wanted to try on some clothes. So she went into the fitting room, and that was the last time anyone saw her. About an hour later, her boyfriend goes back to the fitting room, and she's gone. Her phone was left behind, but her clothes were all neatly folded on the bench. Nobody knows what happened to her. The store didn't have any CCTV either, which was strange. There was footage of her going into the store, and then nothing after that. The footage stopped right at the entrance to the fitting rooms. So that kind of explains why people would be at this mall so late and how this thing had access to so many victims. She was 19 years old and her mom was actually with her at the time. We're trying on dresses for an upcoming wedding, and the mother was outside the fitting room, talking on the phone and waiting for her daughter, when all of a sudden her daughter came running out of the fitting room screaming, "Mom, come quickly." The mother went, "Okay," hung up the phone and turned around, and the fitting room was empty. Her daughter was nowhere to be seen, and again, no sign of a struggle or anything like that. Her phone was left behind, but her clothes were folded neatly on the bench. It was the same story. The store didn't have any CCTV footage either. It comes from a user, and it's about a half-human, half-snake monster living in the basement of a mall. So let's dive right into it. This happened in Indonesia, so I did a little research, and apparently malls are super popular there. So anyway, in this mall, there were rumors that there was a mysterious, creepy guy who worked security there, but nobody knew what he looked like or anything. 3 weeks later, another girl vanished. 1 week after that, another girl vanished in the exact same way, and the authorities still had no idea what was happening. But anyway, they decided to follow him around and see if he took them to the actual security footage. The cops searched everywhere in that basement, but they couldn't find any cameras or any other entrances. The police found bones and personal belongings in different parts of the room, including a pair of jeans and a t-shirt that had been torn in half. Then they heard a hissing sound coming from the other side. They returned with a team of 20 men, armed with guns, machetes, and crowbars. In the center of the chamber was a stone pedestal, and sitting on the pedestal was a humanoid figure. The creature attacked immediately. He lunged at the cops and knocked several of them over. He was incredibly strong and fast. When they returned to the mall, they discovered that the place had been abandoned. All of the shops were empty. There was nobody there at all. A few days later, the police received a call from a woman who identified herself only as Saraswati. Then she said, "I think I can help you." And that's where the story ends. The cops never saw the creature again. That is terrifying. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button below.